Okay, good morning. So we started Reish Mem Beis Chelik Gimel yesterday, and Reish Mem Beis is talking about Kovod Shabbos and Einik Shabbos. Kovod Shabbos means you have nice fresh clothes for Shabbos, you wash, you do things the Kovod Shabbos, and then Einik Shabbos just means the actual food that you have and delighting in Shabbos itself. So let's just read the Mechaber again. Even if someone is dependent on others for his livelihood, if he has a little bit of money available, he should try and spend it l'kavod Shabbos. And when we only say this phrase that you should make your Shabbos very mundane and not sort of go knocking on doors and borrowing money, only when someone is in a very difficult, very tight financial situation. And therefore, in that situation, a person should sort of restrain himself throughout the week so that he has a little bit over so he can spend on Shabbos. So that's where we're up to in Sifkot and Gimel in the Mishnah Berurah. So we said Lemisha Hashad Duchukulei. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Umayri. He hasn't got any security where he can borrow on the back of that security. And if he hasn't got a security, he can't borrow any money, and he can't have the funds to buy for Kovod Shabbos. But if he did have a mashkoin, then he should borrow money for Shabbos, that he shouldn't be mevatel the mitzvah of buying nice food for Shabbos. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, borrow on me and I'll, it's on me and I'll pay you back. So if he can borrow, then he should. So if you look at 18, to two horrors, first one, number 18, even though a person financially is struggling, and therefore, strictly speaking, he is actually exempt from shalosh sudas and the three meals. That's talking about a person who can't borrow money. But if he can, but if he can borrow money, so if a person can borrow money in order to finance the Gimel Sudas, then he should do that. Now it's interesting, in the Shat Tzion, if you look at number Yud Aleph, so the Shat Tzion, of course, is also written by the Mishnah Berurah. The Mishnah Berurah, on our page, on the daf itself, you've got the Mechaber and the Ramah at the top, and then you've got three pieces of the Mishnah Berurah. The one is the classic one is the Mishnah Berurah. That's what we're doing. Then you've got the Bir Halacha, which is more extended discussions, and then you've got the Shat Tzion, which is basically footnotes referencing where he's getting a lot of the things he's saying in the Mishnah Berurah. So in Shat Tzion, Sif Cotton Yud Aleph, Yud Beis, he says, "Came Hashem God to borrow money. V'chein kosav abach. Im yochel lahasik mimi lilvois sarich lilvois v'yivzach b'Hashem shu yazren l'shalom loy." That if you can, you should borrow money if there's someone willing to lend you money, and then HaKadosh Baruch Hu will engineer it that you'll be able to pay back. Now, then he carries on in the Shat Tzion, he shouldn't be reckless. You only borrow money if you know you're going to be able to pay back. It's in the realm of the possible. It's not just some sort of pipe dream. It depends very much on the specific circumstances of a person. Now, if you look at 19, the Nissim Karelitz explains that concept as follows. Even according to the Gaon who says you should borrow money in order to pay for food on Shabbos, just stay within your means. Doesn't mean you can suddenly go borrow money and just spend without limits and having this very lavish suda. A person should borrow money that you've got some shalosh sudas. It can be a couple of rolls and some herring and egg or whatever. It doesn't have to be a very lavish suda. For hoisif shakol toli b'midas b'tchayna shel adam, but really it depends on the level of bitochen of the individual. Or kamesh amru, like it says, levu alai v'heminu bi v'ani pereya. Borrow on me and believe in me and I'll pay you back. V'abitech b'kach b'emunas Shleima, if a person really has proper emunah, yochel lilvos afidu kadei suda shleima b'shadze, then he can borrow and have more of a lavish suda. Bavad shegam b'shayin yonav hu bal madriga b'midah habitochen. As long as it's consistent in other areas of his general emunah. And then he can borrow and have a more lavish suda. Okay. Then we said, but al-kain sorach l'tzamtzim b'shah yomim kadei lechabed es haShabbos. He should sort of budget and restrain himself throughout the week so that he got a bit of money over so he can spend on Shabbos. Says the Mishnah Berurah Sif Cotton Dalet kadei lechabed haShabbos to be mezoilish shel Shabbos v'yontif. Because when it comes to the expenditure for Shabbos and Yontif, we say im moisif moisifin loi, that if a person goes in and adds for his Shabbos budget, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will give him more money. Famous Gemara in Beitza, that a person's expenditure is fixed from one Rosh Hashanah to the next. And therefore you've got to be careful. You shouldn't overspend because maybe that's not what was sort of given to you. But the exception, of course, is expenditure on Shabbos and Yontif for Hitzah's bonav l'talmud Torah and school fees or paying fees for children to go learn. Because there, in these two areas, Hitzah Shabbos and Yontif and Hitzah's bonav l'talmud Torah, if you're moisif moisifin lei. Now, let's just stop there for a second. Two interesting ha'aras. If you look at number 20, this concept of borrowing sort of beyond your means, there's a very interesting bihalacha further on in Tov Kuf Chavtes. He quotes in footnote 20. This is the lashon of the bihalacha there. Sherabim chalolim hipila. This concept of borrowing money is caused a lot of casualties. That ultimately it will cause, if a person lives beyond his means, it could cause a person to be dishonest in business. And who knows where it ends. And the biggest cause of this desire to borrow money and to live beyond your means, that a person sometimes has his wife, his daughters, they're daiten kala, they don't see beyond tomorrow. And happy is the person who does take control of his budget. I can see there's accountants in the room here, so this probably talks to you. That a person should be careful that to live within their means. And the biggest problem is that they're buying on credit, and somehow it will work itself out. But sadly, says the Bi'alacha, it doesn't always. And therefore you've got to be careful. Okay, that's number one. And number two, this concept of Levu Alai, Ani Perea, and Chutz Meitzos Shabbos and Yontif. So in footnote 21, he refers to the famous letter of the Gan. I think this letter of the Gan he wrote, that the Gan went to Eretz Yisrael in his later years. And he wrote a famous letter to his wife and to his mother who was still alive. And at the end, the Gan never made it. I think he got as far as Berlin. Germany, but then he had to turn back, and it was quite cryptic why he turned back. Mina Shemaim Yagvuni, they stopped me from Shemaim. But either way, in that letter he writes, in footnote 21, the first paragraph, V'chein kosav hagrob be'gartoi, v'techabed es haShabbos ma'oid, kasher hoye lefonai, you got to try really honor Shabbos as much as you can, v'al tetzamtzim klal, don't hold back, ki kol mezonosov shel adam, etc. So one of the sort of his ethical will, as it were, that he wrote to his family when he was going to Eretz Yisrael, was at this point they should have enjoy Shabbos and spend lavishly on Shabbos, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu will pay back. So one has to balance it. Okay, let's just carry on the Mishnah Berurah. So we're halfway through Sifkot and Dalet. Loivin beribis letzorech sudas Shabbos or sudas mitzvah. A person can even borrow with interest for sudas Shabbos and sudas mitzvah. V'hainu, of course, me'eni Yehudi, from a non-Jewish person, or from a Jewish person in a way that it's allowed to borrow with interest, like with the Heta Isk or something. If someone sends him food to eat on Shabbos, don't eat it during the week. If someone sends you some nice food, then make sure you keep it for Shabbos. Kein kosav b'sefer chasidin. V'ayin lekam b'simen tofrish tali dalet sif beis. T'das ha'shulchan aruch shom de'ha'oni yochel l'shanes b'migbas purim l'mashe yitze after gvur l'tzorech purim. That if a person and only was given money l'tzorech purim, that he can divert the funds for other hotzahs. Ochein gam sham yesh machmir bezeh. I'm betur sham that you should only use it for the dedicated reason that it was given, i.e. letzorech Purim. Okay, now back to the Machaba, the top line. Mitakonos Ezra. From the Ezra made a takana, sheyu mechabsim begodim b'chamishi b'Shabbos mimnei kavod Shabbos, that you should do laundry on Thursday lekavod Shabbos. Says the Ramah, v'nagin lolosh kadei shir challah. There's also a minhag on erev Shabbos to bake kadei a shir challah so that you can make the bracha. Babayis lasos mehem lechomim livtzei aleihem b'Shabbos v'yontav. So you make challah, you make dough in order that you can make challahs on Shabbos. V'hu mikavod Shabbos v'yontav. And that is part of kavod Shabbos and yontav. Ve'ein l'shanas, and you should not change from that practice. Yeshe kosvush of mixas mekomis nagu lechol mulisa. There is a custom, says the Ramah, to eat mulisa shekurin pastida belel Shabbos. It's some sort of with a pastry with some sort of meat filling. Zeicher lamon shahi mechusa lemailo ulemata, because the mon was covered from above and below. And therefore, this sort of pastrami or type of burek, a type of food, has got the same concept. You've got the mazonos on either side, and you've got the filling inside. But I haven't seen people who are choshes for this. Okay, says the Mishnah Berurah, Sif Cotton Hay. So this is the Takonos Ezra to launder clothes on Thursday. Now, why Thursday? Hanu Kadesh you levonim l'Shabbos, so that you should have nice new fresh clothes for Shabbos. Avaloi be'erev Shabbos, but don't leave the laundry till Friday. Kadesh you penuyim l'sasik b'tzorchi Shabbos, because Friday is a busy day, and back in the day, laundry meant going down to the river, and it was quite an exercise. So the post can speak about it on the footnotes. He says if you've got a washing machine or a dryer nowadays, it could be different. But in those days, when laundry was a very big exercise, you should do it on Thursday, not Friday. Avalo be'erev Shabbos, because you should penuyim l'sasik b'tzorchi Shabbos. So lefizeh tzorich lizoher shelelech b'cholok echod b'kama Shabboses. You shouldn't wear the same Shabbos shirt for over many Shabboses, kadesh lo lavra takonos Ezra, because takonos Ezra is to have a fresh laundered shirt for Shabbos. Now, interesting, if you look at 25, which clothes does this apply to? Is it the takonos Ezra to launder clothes before Shabbos? Does it apply to a suit, or is it a dafka's shirt? What is it? So if you look at 25, he says, for dafka begodim hasmuchim leguf v'chein cholza. Is dafka referring to clothes which are next to the body, for example, underwear, v'chein cholza and a shirt, shedarkam nislachlich, because those items get soiled more quickly, umachabsim oison ba'ofen kavu, and therefore they need laundry more regularly. Ava begodim elyonim, but outer clothes, a suit for a guy or a dress for a woman, das hagonim nisim karelitz, she'ein chiv lechavsim. You don't have to launder those every week. Ela she'yu nekim, when you chodim Shabbos, to have special, a suit for Shabbos, a tie for Shabbos, or something like that, a dress for Shabbos, and they're clean and the miyuchodim, that's sufficient. Okay. Now, let's carry on the Mishnah Berurah. Sif Cotton Vov. So there's a minhag, says the Ramah, that you make challah on Friday lekavod Shabbos, and you should bake kadesh shir challah. There's just, by the way, that hainu milvad shalisha v'afir michlal kavod Shabbos v'yontav, that aside from the lisha and the afir, the kneading and the baking, there's also to actually make the dough. Kamosha Messiah lebesoif. That's part of kavod Shabbos. Now, oid yesh b'zeh tam. There is another reason to do this on erev Shabbos. Kadei lekayim mitzvah challah, to fulfill the mitzvah of challah. Why? Lefi she'ibda es adam harishon. That Adam Harishon is called the Challah of the world, and Chava, actually, because she made him do an Aveira, she destroyed or ruined the Challah of the world. And therefore, as part of the tikkun for that, there is a concept of making Challah on Erev Shabbos to undo or to be mesaken what she did wrong. Even those who have paspalta, that means kosher, but baked by a non-Jewish baker, on Shabbos one should try very hard to have only pas Yisrael, or pasha d'imhu onus she'eno amal lekadesh ki im al pas shel eimen Yehudi kamosh motzlan shechayil ha'ivrim yochel lekadesh alav. If there's nothing else, then there's nothing else, and you should use that at least. There's also the concept of there's interesting machlekas in the poskim, what if a person, the share of challah, whatever, you have to find out what it is, between 2.5 pounds and 4 pounds of dough. So it's quite a lot of dough. So some women have the practice, they make the challah, and they'll set aside, take some and they'll bake for this Shabbos, and the rest they'll put in the freezer. Now that is a big machlikas in poskim whether you can make a bracha on that, because some say that you actually need to bake all the challah now, and you can't. If you're putting slive in the freezer, then you can't make the bracha on that dough. But that's a machlikas. That's something to look into. Okay, yeah, there's just two interesting ha'aras. What if the bakery, the Bir Halacha talks about that making challahs on Erev Shabbos is B'Kovod Shabbos. Now the age-old question, what if the Grudzinski or the Carmeli or the bakery challahs are nicer than the home-baked challahs? Which is better Kovod Shabbos? So interestingly, if you take a look at the Bir Halacha, V'hu Kovod Shabbos, it says V'yesh l'zeh remesh shekosov hoy b'yom hashishi echines asher yovihu eis asher toifu. Okay, mashma d'yesh lefes b'erev Shabbos l'hachin l'Shabbos. So you see, there's a reference in Torah, an allusion to the fact that you should bake on Erev Shabbos. Now, gam b'zman haGemara hoy minhag kavur lozeh. Even in the times of the Gemara, there was a minhag to do this. K'mo shehevi Amogen Avram uva'avonuseinu harabim hayoy mischilu eize noshim lahashbis haminhag hahu v'loikich min ha'ofer. Says the Chofetz Chaim in Bir Halacha that sadly nowadays, back 100 years ago, it's become quite common that bakeries are baking challahs and women are being mevatel this age-old minhag from the time of the Gemara. They're not baking their own challahs. V'lav shapeh ovdi, the makdinin bozeh kovod haShabbos, because by so doing they're minimizing kovod Shabbos. However, in note 34, which in my one is right at the back, he says, v'dafka bizmano. He says dafka in those days, in the Chofetz Chaim's days, shayu oifim b'mafia lechem l'Shabbos k'mo limechol, because that the bread which they made was the same bread that you would bake, you would have on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. It wasn't a special thing. You go to Grudzinski, you go to any of the bakeries nowadays, on a Thursday and a Friday, it looks different. They're the special challahs, especially for Shabbos. Kosev v'shal shuvah zoletzion zeh mechasa b'kovod Shabbos. Sorry, she'ein zeh mechasa b'kovod Shabbos. And therefore, going into a bakery and buying challahs for Shabbos doesn't take away from, because that's not what the Chofetz Chaim is referring to. V'das hagorim b'l yashuv שהמסענג מחלש של האופה יויסה מאשר חלש הביתס. If you enjoy the bakery challah more than the home-baked challah, reshai likach challah min האופה, then you're allowed to. Ve'ena mechase bekach bekovod the Shabbos, that doesn't take away from kovod Shabbos. Kiven shesoid aminig lolosh chalas v'bayis, because lekayim bekach is mitzvah enig Shabbos, because really the focus is enig Shabbos, and therefore if you enjoy the bakery one better, you've got to be careful how you explain this at home, but that's the concept. Let's just do the last Mishnah Berurah. So that's the pastida, this concept of having some sort of baked item with a filling, which is zeichel amon. So he says betal, because it was covered with dew on the bottom and the top. And he says in the note, any type of similar food, a burek or something, would tick the box. However, says the Mishnah Berurah, but our minhag, says the Mishnah Berurah, not like the Rabbi says the Mishnah Berurah says, I have seen it, and this is our minhag to have these type of burekas or pastida. Okay, that's the end of Reish Mem Beis.